Hello everyone. I'd like to take a moment of silence in order to honor Chase, that is my dog, who recently passed away. You will be missed. Thank you. Now, Chase was an avid supporter of my reading, so we're going to wrap up May in his honor. Now, I participated in several readathons for the month of May, and they were the AAPI, that's the Asian Readathon, and there was also Springathon, and I did a wrap-up mid-month for that video already, so I'm going to link it below. You can check that out. So the other readathons I participated in was Horror Mayhem, Southern Charm Readathon, and then of course the Escape the Readathon. So for the Horror Mayhem, I read, let's see, Lakeside Cemetary was one of the books. Okay, so the Lakeside Cemetery is a unique story about Kara, who's this 25-year-old girl that hangs around the cemetery, and she witnesses this statue that comes to life and it starts to dig up a dead body. So once she befriends the dead man and then gets involved in this mystery surrounding the death, then she wants to, you know, help him. And even if that Marine's resurrecting some other, you know, dead people out there, gotta do what you gotta do. Now, I thought that this book was realistic, that Kara was seeking validation from social media and feeling down about all of these failed friendships, and I think that this book very much had like a YA feel, but it has a lot of uncommon sense things that are being said and done, and that's why I think I label it, you know, a bit of YA. I think there's a lot of quick transitions and also a lot of comedy, but I did think that it was quite repetitive with Snug as a hug. I mean, that must have been mentioned like 5 times. And then there's a lot of references to the cute butts. Anyway, it was one character. It was just very, very annoying. And they kept going to the same location. So overall, I did like this book. There were just some things that were kind of missing for me. And another book that I read for Horror Mayhem is Sour Candy. And that follows Phil, who is shopping at Walmart when he accepts candy from this screaming kid. And then when he gets home, that same kid is in his house, and then everyone thinks that the kid is his. Now, that was a trip. But nothing points to it being otherwise. There's pictures and neighbors are vouching for it and everything. So now the first line of the book states that it was 4 months after encountering the kid at Walmart when the last of Phil's teeth fell out. So, you already know it is going to be a doozy from there. But I thought that it was suspenseful with all of the makings of some sort of like occult horror book, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't super gory by any means. And it was short. It was like 8 pages. So a really quick read that just gave you all of the details you needed with nothing extra, which I definitely appreciated, but that also resulted in lack of explanation for quite a number of things. But I did enjoy it a lot. And another book I read, what was it? Living Dead Girl. Now, this is another short horror book. It's more horror, psychological suspense when you have first-person POV, where you follow Alice, who is a girl that is kidnapped by this pedophile and held captive for years. I think she was like 11 at the time. And then now the kidnapper wants her to help acquire a new girl. So it's overall a very sad story, and then even sadder about, you know, how victims hide in plain sight, and most of us, you know, don't even see them and fail to act on their part, which makes them, you know, further victimized. It's not extremely graphic, which I think that it's not because of such a sad, realistic topic, but it depicts a lot of really heart-wrenching situations, and, you know, you just have a damaged psyche that, you know, Alice can't even think properly to, you know, advocate for herself or others. This book definitely makes you want to hold your kids tight, you know, and teach them not to talk to strangers for sure. Now the next book is Brother. Okay, now this book is a trip. Okay, so Brother is a horror story about like this poor backwoods family that, you know, basically kills people. However, one of the adopted children, his name is Michael, he wants something more out of life while his brother Ray has some grudges that he has held on to for quite a long period of time. I did think that it was, you know, a lot more sentimental than I had expected. It also had a shocking but really sad, realistic ending. And I do appreciate, you know, books that have a lot of realism in it. It tackles a lot of sibling rivalry, some cannibalism, and how you are definitely a product of, you know, your environment until you get exposed to something different. So very relatable in that aspect. And it has a lot of tips about sticking to a formula, you know, without any deviation, which is going to help you, you know, get away with a crime. You know, now I'm not saying that you got to follow these tips. I'm just saying that those things are there. I watch a lot of, you know, true crime. And let's see what else we got on the list. Tender as the Flesh. I talked about that in my last vlog. And that's it for Horror Mayhem. I think some of these weren't as horror as I had expected them to be. But, you know, overall, you know, it happened, you know. It is what it is. And then I had the Southern Charm readathon, y'all. I got some really good books in for that too. So I have a few prompts for the Southern Charm readathon. You have Bless Your Heart, which is an emotional, heartwarming read. And that is If Beale Street Could Talk. I also read this as a buddy read for The Broken Spine. She is reading all the books by James Baldwin for the entire year. So this is the one for May. If Beale Street Could Talk is set in like the 1950s and 60s and is told in a first person point of view of this black pregnant 19-year-old girl named Tish, whose fiance Fonny is accused of this really horrible crime. So her and her family are basically trying to clear his name and get him out of jail despite this really unfair justice system. Ultimately, it is a beautiful love story, and let me read you this. It has the most realistic declaration of love that I have ever read. Let me see if I can find it. So Fonny is an artist, and he's telling Tish, I ain't the kind of joker going to give you a hard time running around after other chicks and shit like that. I smoke a little pot, but I ain't ever popped no needles, and I'm really square. I live with wood and stone. I got stone in the basement. I'm working up here all the time, and I'm looking for a loft where I can really work. So all I'm trying to tell you, Tish, is I ain't offering you much. I ain't got no money, and I work odd jobs, and that means that you're going to have to work too. And when you come home, most likely I'll just grunt and keep on with my chisels and shit, and maybe sometimes you'll think I don't even know you're here. But don't ever think that, ever. You're with me all the time, all the time. Without you, I don't know if I could make it at all, baby. And when I put down the chisel, I'll always come to you. I'll always come to you. I need you. I love you. That is amazing. Very realistic, okay? But anyway, this book tackles a lot of things of racism, colorism, sexism, religion, domestic violence, and the harsh reality definitely of, you know, prison life with an unjust, you know, justice system. I loved how ride or die Tish's family was for Fonny, because that is such a beautiful thing when some families do cut and run when you get into, you know, hard times. And I think that her sister Ernestine is a trip, because she scared me so much with her passion, that is for sure. But I thought the book was really like suspenseful and very relatable. But I will say that I did not like that whole omnipresent first person point of view of Tish, and I didn't like that the book was just jumping around in time a lot, because it was just confusing. And speaking of confusing, the ending was confusing, and I will say disappointing. So I'm not sure if I'll be picking up Baldwin again, but I did enjoy this book. Sweet Tea. Sweet Tea, I have Read Something Sweet on the cover or Sweet Story. So for that, I picked up Pink Raise Your Glass. Now, I thought this was a memoir, and it actually is just a graphical depiction of her life, you know, tons of pictures. And I already did a dedicated review for that, and I will link that below as well. Then I have Hot as Blue Blazes. Pick a book with a hot setting. Oh, okay. Oh, this is a book I've been wanting to read for a long time, and I'm glad I finally did. So this is The Mermaid of Black Conch. Now, this is a fantastical book about a mermaid named Akaya who is game fished out of the sea by these tourists who, they're in the Caribbean somewhere. And they don't have anything good planned for her, that is for sure. And then she is rescued and taken home by a local named David. And then as she is learning to be human again and remember her past, they fall in love. But then they have to contend with this curse that, you know, made her a mermaid in the first place. But I thought that this book had such a close correlation to the stealing of Africans during the slavery trade, which really got me into my feelings quite a bit early on, and it was hard to shake off throughout the entire book. But I thought that it was really sentimental with a lot of references about living this lonely life and also coming into, you know, your adulthood. But there was definitely a lot of like sexual references, which leads you to think that men always think with their loins, and you know. But it wasn't graphic. So I will say that that made it tolerable a whole lot more. It did piss me off though that one character was abandoned by her baby daddy, but then as soon as he shows up, it's like all is forgiven. It's like, come on now, girl. I just felt really pissed at her for that. But overall, I do think that it is a beautiful love story, you know, very descriptive, that you almost taste the sea. Like I felt the salt on my palate. I thought that it was slow paced, adequately so, I think, and it is told from, is it told? Yeah, it's told from different perspectives, and that there was some redundancy because of that, of getting different people's stories. So I think it was appropriate. But it did hold my attention the entire time, and I really liked this book. Really good. And let's see what else I got on the list. We have, okay, so Heavens to Betsy, which is a mystery thriller. That's Brother, already talked about that. Now you have All the Fixins, book with multiple genres. Okay, so I am participating in an NK Jemisin read-along. You know, she does like sci-fi fantasy type books. And I read for this prompt, The 100,000 Kingdoms, which I talked about in my mid-month wrap-up. So you can check that out. So I am reading this book for May because the other one was for April. So anyway, I finished the second book in the Inheritance trilogy. So I'm gonna talk about this. So I got two of these for this same prompt. Anyway, so this book is about like gods and them walking the earth and all this other stuff, right? So this book picks up about 10 years after where the 100,000 Kingdom leaves off. So if you know, you know. If not, then go back and read the other book. But it's not a spoiler me talking about this book because it's a whole nother set of characters. So you have this blind woman named Ori who finds this homeless guy and moves him into her house. And he tends to glow in the morning. So while she knows that he's not necessarily a god, she knows there's something special about him. But just like he's special, she's special in some way too, because she's blind, but somehow she can see things surrounding magic. So when all these godlings around the city starts getting murdered, then the authorities come knocking at their doors like, what's up? What's going on in this household? Okay. But you know, NK Jemisin, she has this gradual unfolding of the story and action. And I was about maybe a fourth-ish way through before I started making the connections with the first book. But it has its own action and stuff in its own right. But it is very dense. It has a lot of political intrigue, you know, a lot of imagery. you have this drama surrounding which gods that people worship, and there's revenge and betrayal and bloody killings and comedy. Just a lot going on, very entertaining. I did not though understand how demon blood can kill gods and godlings, but somehow you can do the do with them and not get killed. So I just let that slide, but I was like, okay. But there definitely was a lot of sad parts about loneliness, you know, being a huge punishment, you know, to live a life alone and not have interactions with other people, and, you know, about forgiveness not being easy to give, because, you know, we know how that is. But overall, I enjoyed this book. I'm not going to continue with the third book in the series. I'm just going to say that, okay? For what it is, it's fine, but just like with the 5th season, I'm not super invested. For here, I'm not good into the gods and all that stuff. But I definitely am going to be tracking spoilers so I can know what happens. Just don't want to read another 400-page book in this series, okay? Don't kill me. Let that slide, y'all. Okay, let it go, let it go, let it go. Okay, so let's see. What's the next book? Chicken and Dumplings have a comfort read, and I scratched it out. Oh, okay, The Women of Brewster Place. Okay, so for The Women of Brewster Place, I was supposed to do this as a group read, and then some stuff happened, and it did not happen as a group read, but I still read this book anyway. I remember a long time ago seeing this movie with Oprah Winfrey back in the day. So this was a really good opportunity to read the book behind the movie, and it was enjoyable. So overall, The Women of Brewster Place is a, you know, powerful short story about several women that are trying to survive the daily struggle in this impoverished, crime-laden housing project that was intentionally walled off from the rest of the city. So despite that, some of these people are able to find joys in their friendship. I thought that it was traumatic. There was a lot of sad scenes. I felt for these women. There was definitely a lot of correlations I felt with my childhood. I will say that there was a large cast of characters, which was difficult for me to keep straight at times. And I felt that the story did a lot of jumping between people and scenes and time, which left a lot of plot holes for me to be able to fill for myself, which I didn't really like that writing style. But it was a very short book, and I liked it for that. And let's see, we got Hey Y'all. How y'all doing? A book with more than one POV. I did The Obsession, which is about a teen obsessed with this girl. Anyway, that was part of my previous vlog. I'll link that below. And the last book on this list is Howdy Partner. And this is a book featuring friendship or family. Okay, so I did Jonah's Gourd Vine, and this is a Zora Neale Hurston book, okay? And it's basically about a man named John who is living in a time that's like a few decades post-Civil War, and he's trying to find his way in life as a black guy. So he starts out dirt poor and then becomes this, you know, well-known preacher with his vices, okay? But he definitely does not lead a clean life, I'll tell you that. But along the way, he marries this really good woman and gets involved in some mess. I will say I did not like the dialogue. It was a lot of backcountry dialect that was difficult for me to understand. I think reading that, it slowed me down. I think that if I would have listened to it via audio, I probably would have picked it up a whole lot better. But reading it just kind of threw me off. And I do think that it jumped around in time and scenes and people, similar to The Women of Brewster Place, and so that threw me off as well. But there was a lot of violence and a lot of negative talk amongst the black people, and I kept thinking about how that stems from their treatment in slavery, because you emulate what you were taught. So that just It was just a sad thing of me thinking that. But I just felt also a lot of the insults were juvenile, even as the characters grew up. Now, there was a statement in the book that just really made me sad. And it stated basically that Black people needed to learn to love their children, because previously it pretty much was no point in them doing so because they were considered property that could be taken away. But you know, I definitely understood it. Overall, I thought that it was a nice story. And as a bonus, what I say is for that prompt. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and put this for this prompt. Okay, for Howdy Partner, it says books featuring friendship. Okay, so last minute I picked this up. I can't remember which booktuber I was at spoke about this picture book. This is called Mary Who Wrote Frankenstein. And it's basically kind of like a biography story of Mary Shelley, who wrote Frankenstein. And pretty much she was on vacation or something with some friends, and one of the guys out of boredom challenged everybody to write a story, and at the end of the trip they would see who has the best story. Well, hers definitely took longer. I think it was like 9 months in order to write the story of Frankenstein, and it basically came to her in a dream, but there was also a castle nearby named Frankenstein. So really interesting, and it was definitely very quick. It's a children's book too, but worth checking out if you're interested. And it's pretty big. It was a nice story. Lots of colorful images. And let me see, I believe that is it. This has been a very busy month. So the only thing that is outstanding at this point, probably by the time of this vlog, it will not be, is Escape the Readathon. So wish us luck to see how the partiers do and get out of the haunted house on time. So anyway, like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know if you've read any of these books. And I hope to see you next month and talk about some more books. Bye, y'all.